just look at how absolutely wonderful Medicare for All will be. I mean, you'll have ambulances pulling up and just handing out all this free pills and stuff, and you'll have people so happy they're dancing. Would Medicare for All actually be this wonderful, however? Let's find out.
As Republicans in Congress move to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
And it's about time. I mean, I think that's one of the few things that both Democrats and Republicans hate. In fact, I'm pretty sure the only people who don't hate the Affordable Care Act are insurance companies, since the ACA pretty much mandates the use of their services.
Democrats are moving toward Medicare for All, a single-payer plan that builds on Medicare and would cover everyone at far lower cost.
Well, the intention would be to cover everyone at a far lower cost, but would that actually happen? Because you have to think about what it is that single-payer systems actually do. Single-payer systems don't build more hospitals or hire more doctors or develop more medicine. They don't increase the amount of medical resources out there. The only thing they do is take the existing medical infrastructure and spread it out. You're actually decreasing availability while more or less keeping the cost the same. If maximum availability and lowest possible cost is what your goal is, then you should be pursuing a free market-based initiative.
Most House Democrats are already supporting a Medicare for All bill. Senator Bernie Sanders is preparing to introduce it in the Senate. Both California and New York State are moving toward single-payer plans.
Yeah, because those are the states you want to model the whole country after, places with record unemployment and homelessness. Rule of thumb, if an idea comes out of either California or New York, it's probably bad.
With healthcare emerging as the public's top concern, according to recent polls.
Just something interesting to point out, it's only as of recently that healthcare was a huge, major concern for people across the country. Before the government got involved, healthcare was super cheap and available. The idea of someone dying because of lack of medical treatment or going bankrupt paying their medical expenses was pretty much unheard of. There's a video by Bitbutter that explains this in more detail. Link is in the description.
The choice between repeal of the Affordable Care Act and Medicare for All is likely to be the major domestic issue in the presidential campaign of 2020, other than getting Trump out of office if he lasts that long.
You ever hear of Godwin's Law? I feel like there's something similar with progressive conversations. Like the longer a progressive opens their mouth, the greater of a chance they have of bashing Donald Trump, however relevant it may be to the subject at hand. Yeah, he's not a perfect president by any stretch of the imagination, but he's done a hell of a lot more to curb homelessness and unemployment than your precious California and New York.
And the better choice is clear.
Well, in my opinion, the better choice is neither. Both of them are authoritarian corporatist systems that screw over consumers to benefit big companies. The only difference is one of them benefits big insurance companies, the other one benefits big healthcare providing companies.
Private for-profit insurers spend a fortune trying to attract healthy people while avoiding the sick and needy.
So this is a common talking point you hear from progressives regarding health insurance. Oh, insurance companies only go after healthier people and avoid sicker people. Yeah, that's because that's where the primary market for insurance is. Insurance, by definition, is something you buy before you need it as opposed to when you need it. Hence why healthier people tend to be the biggest market for insurance. Yes, I do believe there should be some system in place to provide health care to people who are in dire straits and can't necessarily afford their treatment, but insurance is simply the wrong tool for the job.
Filling out paperwork from hospitals and providers.
And you think this paperwork would go away or decrease if the government was suddenly in charge of the whole system? Adding layers of bureaucracy on top of the system is more likely going to increase the amount of paperwork, not decrease it. If anything, the private sector has done a whole hell of a lot to reduce the amount of paperwork involved through apps and computers and websites and things like that.
Paying top executives and rewarding shareholders.
So when is it specifically that top executives and shareholders get rewarded? Here's what people who make this argument don't really take into account. Companies that do a shitty job don't get very many customers. On the other hand, ones that provide a high quality service do. So these top executives and shareholders aren't being rewarded arbitrarily, as you seem to be implying. They're earning a higher profit as a result of providing a better quality service. This is a good thing because it creates an incentive to provide a high quality service. If we take Robert's advice and do away with that profit incentive, well, just look at the wait times in Canada and the UK.
And for-profit insurers are merging like mad in order to make even more money.
And one of the reasons they can get away with that is because regulations make it harder for smaller insurance companies to compete with them and pose any sort of challenge to their monopolization. I'm with Robert on that point that I believe health insurance companies are way too monolithic, but the solution to that is more of a free market, not less.
These are among the major reasons why health insurance is becoming so expensive.
The reason health insurance is so expensive is to a large extent due to government. From bailouts and subsidies that keep shitty insurance companies in business, to regulations that make it difficult for smaller companies to compete, to shit like Obamacare that outright forces you to buy their product, it's largely the government that's been inflating the price of health insurance. In fact, to a large extent, government is kind of the reason people even need health insurance in the first place. Back before you had the FDA and AMA and other regulations jacking up the cost of healthcare was so cheap you didn't really even need insurance. It was considered more of a luxury for the wealthy rather than something everybody had to have.
And why almost every other advanced nation.
So I'm going to make this really clear right now. If you're one of these people who use the every other developed nation argument, you need to cut it out, because that's the bandwagon fallacy. Every other developed country in the world may use single payer, but if single payer ends up being a shitty system, then they're wrong.
Including our neighbor to the north, has adopted some form of a single-payer system at less cost per person.
Germany doesn't use a single-payer system, though. Germany uses a multi-payer system, where the government-run healthcare system is optional. It competes alongside the private sector. This is actually closer to what I advocate for. Granted, that's not to say the German healthcare system is a complete free market and that they have no authoritarian bullshit going on, but that their system isn't an apt comparison to a single-payer system.
And with better health outcomes.
I wouldn't be too confident about that. Single-payer systems have a lot of the same problems that other types of socialized healthcare have. A lack of market signals leads to misallocation of resources, which leads to shit like rationing, longer wait times. Heck, there's a lot of cases in the NHS of cosmetic surgery being given priority to life-saving operations. See Shane Killian's video, How to Argue for Universal Healthcare, for more details on this.
Most Americans support Medicare for all.
Okay, well, at one point, most Americans supported Jim Crow laws, slavery, the Salem witch trials, Japanese internment camps. Most Americans supporting something isn't quite the same thing as something being a good idea, as copious amounts of historical precedent can attest to.
According to a Gallup poll conducted in May, a majority would like to see a single-payer system implemented. An April survey from the economist YouGov showed 60% of Americans in favor of expanding Medicare to providing health insurance to every American.
Well, yes, but that's not all the Medicare for All bill supported by Bernie Sanders and other progressive politicians stipulate. Sure, expanding Medicare coverage to every American doesn't seem like a bad idea, but the devil's in the details. See, a lot of Americans hold the mistaken belief that under a single-payer type system they'd be able to keep their insurance. As is, no questions asked. If they read the fine print in Sanders' bill, however, they'll see that one of the things that the bill does is ban duplicative insurance, which basically means that anything covered in the government policy isn't allowed to be covered by a private sector company. So basically what this does is give the government carte blanche to decide which aspects of your health insurance policy to monopolize. The government basically just gets to decide what aspects of your health care your insurance gets to cover. And you see, when most people think of Medicare for All, they don't think of this aspect of it, and I have a feeling the poll results may be different if they were.
That includes nearly half of people who identify themselves as Republican.
It's not really important to me what parties support a proposal or idea. I evaluate ideas as they stand, as what they accomplish, basically. There's a lot of stuff that the Libertarian Party supports that I don't necessarily agree with as well.
If congressional Republicans gut the Affordable Care Act...
Oh, you mean like how you want to gut my private health care plan?
The American public will be presented with a real choice ahead. Either expensive health care for a few.
But that's exactly what the ACA does. By forcing people to buy health insurance whether they want it or not, that creates artificial demand, which raises the price above what it would be in the market. And notice the Boolean way he is framing this issue. We either get rid of the whole entire ACA or we just leave it in place as is. I'm perfectly open to the idea that there are certain aspects of the ACA that are good and should be kept in place while we get rid of the other stupid ones like compulsory insurance.
Or affordable health care for the many.
But a single-payer system wouldn't accomplish that. It would actually raise the cost of healthcare because now, instead of responding to the market signals created by consumers, it would respond to the artificially inflated market signals provided by the government. It wouldn't even really make it more available because, as I've mentioned at the beginning of the video, you're not actually creating more medical resources, you're just taking the resources that already exist and spreading them out thinner. Saying a single-payer system would increase the availability of healthcare is kind of like saying spreading butter around on a piece of toast will increase the amount of butter on the toast. If you want actual examples of what would happen if we instituted a single-payer system, look at countries like Canada, the UK, which have longer wait times, waiting lists, rationing, things like that. You know what doesn't have wait times and rationing lists? My Patreon page. Link will be in the description. Until next time, this has been Philosophossum, making stupidity play dead. Have a good one.